Onyx Storm is finally here. And obviously after reading it, the number one thing to do while we wait an untold amount of time for the next book is to dive headfirst into theories. If you haven't read Onyx Storm yet, obviously you should not be watching this video. If you're looking for a refresher on Fourth Wing and Iron Flame before you read Onyx Storm, I'll link my recap videos on the screen and in the description box. Today, we're chatting about theories that I've seen from Reddit, from TikTok, some theories that I have, and some theories that my friends and I have been noodling on. This is my favorite part about reading fantasy, is the theories that crop up after new releases, like between TV seasons, between books. Like, this is sort of like my favorite time because my brain just gets to run wild with possibilities. I will link any Reddit threads or TikToks that I mention in the description box. So let's begin with theory number one. Who turned Venin at the end of Onyx Storm? This is the biggest and most hotly debated topic that I've seen regarding Onyx Storm so far. And the candidates that have been brought up are Garrick, Bohdi, Auric, and Brennan. I personally only believe it's either Bohdi or Brennan. So those are the two that I'll be talking about in this video. If you have very strong evidence otherwise, please leave the evidence in the comments and we can talk about it more in my next video. But I want to start with what we know about this mystery person, okay? Because there are a few things we do know. Number one, we know that Xaden cares for this person. We know that this person watched him struggle with his veninism over the past few months. And this person is someone that Xaden would have never expected to turn Venin, okay? So let's start with the evidence against Bohdi. Number one, his dragon was severely wounded. And the dragon that Xaden notices, like in the canyon, is unconscious. For a dragon to be unconscious, they have to be severely wounded. And to be fair, Theophanie did send a tornado through the canyon. So like any of the dragons, I guess, could have gotten scooped up in the tornado. But we know that the dragon was severely injured. We also know that Bohdi was trying to counter Theophanie's signet and it wasn't working out. He was failing. Violet was like, just go because whatever you're doing is not working. A motive for turning Venin could have been that he was burning himself out, trying so hard to counter Theophanie's signet that he needed more power and needed to channel from the earth for that power. So that could be a possible motive. Number three, he obviously knew about Xaden being Venin. Number four, Xaden would have given Tyrandor to Bohdi if he wasn't Venin because he literally said over and over and over again that Tyrandor belongs to their family. But after Xaden lost his shit and was talking about the plan to marry Violet with Sigale, he said, "You saw what happened. This is the only way." So is the only way to have Tyrandor go to someone in their family be through marrying Violet and making her part of the family. And did he need to bring someone else into their family because the last two remaining members of their family are now Venin? He literally said that his father would be so ashamed to find out that Tyrandor was given back to their family and that it was given to a Venin. So I don't think he would give it to Bohdi if Bohdi was Venin, obviously. But it could also just be that he realized truly that Bohdi was never gonna take it no matter how hard he tried. I still think the only logical reason for marrying Violet, other than loving her obviously, is to give Tyrandor to somebody in their family because Bohdi is Venin now as well. Another very damning piece of evidence in my opinion is that Imogen says she sees Bohdi on his hands and knees throwing up. And many people think that that is him channeling, and I have to agree because she could have said anything. She could have said, oh, Bohdi was over in the corner throwing up. Bohdi was over in the corner with his arm bleeding out, whatever. He was specifically noted to be on his hands and knees. So he could have maybe even accidentally channeled. I don't know, but I do think that that was kind of a suspicious way of portraying Bohdi in that situation. But at the same time, I feel like Bohdi is almost a little too obvious in this situation. And I'm a big fan of murder mysteries and I never, ever correctly guess who done it. So I feel like I'm not gonna start now. I feel like if I think it's Bohdi, it's definitely not. But I certainly feel like the evidence against him is the most overwhelming. All right, now let's move on to the evidence against Brennan. Brennan is obviously somebody that Xaden cares about, and obviously not as much as Bohdi or Garrick, but like he is now his brother through marriage. So he cares about him. Brennan tried to mend him all these months. So like they obviously have a relationship of some sorts together. Part of me wonders if the Venin calling each other brother and all of that is like sort of a subtle foreshadowing to the fact that like his actual brother one day was also going to be a Venin, because now him and Brennan are literally brothers legally. It could also just be kind of like how vampires have a sire, and anybody who's turned by that vampire is kind of a son or daughter of that person who turned them, and then they can call each other brother and sister. So I could be looking too much into the brother situation, but I do feel like that could be sort of like foreshadowing. We know that Violet was gone for 12 hours after this person turned Venin, but we don't know how long it takes for their eyes to go back to normal after channeling. 12 hours seems like it could be pretty reasonable if you don't take that much. You know, like when Xaden accidentally like channeled from the headboard, he was like, oh, I just took a little bit, but I didn't even feel it. His eyes didn't turn red. So if you only like take a little bit, maybe your eyes don't turn red, or maybe Brennan was able to sort of like mend himself in a way. And by mend, I mean like maybe he was able to like clear up his eyes at least if he was the one who turned. Or maybe Violet just knew that he was the one who turned because of her conversations with Xaden in that 12-hour period. Or I guess her memories were erased, so she wouldn't have known, right? But maybe that memory wasn't erased. I'm like sort of thinking about this in real time, because if it was Brennan and she saw him after her memories were erased, she would probably notice that his eyes are red, right? So either she didn't mention it, she already knew his eyes weren't red, or he's just not the person that turned. Another piece of evidence is that Brennan obviously like intimately knew about Xaden being a Venin, because he was actively trying to mend him, which might be why Xaden thinks that he's the last person who would turn, because he knows there's no cure and he saw how much Xaden struggled with it. So he could be like the last person Xaden would imagine turning Venin. Many people also think that the random shift in point of views that just came out of nowhere at the end were actually done as a plot point to alert us that all of those chapters were happening at the same time. And that was the only way to get that point across, was to get the different point of views from everybody. So that would mean that Bohdi was with Imogen at that time, if these are all happening concurrently, and not out away from the city in a canyon with Xaden. Some people think that those chapters are also sort of alibis for everybody, and Brennan wasn't in any of those chapters. So that is a little bit suspicious. And finally, again, for motive, we know he was burnt out from mending Mira. He needed power siphoned into him to finish her mending, because he was completely out of power. And we know that one of the reasons people turn Venin is for more power when they're drained. So maybe he did. Maybe that is a possible motive for him. The argument against that is that obviously Sloane siphoned power back into him. So maybe he was fully rejuvenated and back to full strength at this time. But it's something to think about. I am very curious to hear what you guys think about this. I'm sure every single person has an opinion on who they think it was. I don't think it was Garrick, and I don't think it was Arik either. And maybe that's just wishful thinking, because right now Arik's character is the person I'm actually like most excited about in this story, to see his character arc. His signet is so cool, and I've started my reread of this, and he's known from the beginning of this book what is happening at the end. There are plenty of clues, which I'll share in another video, but if he can see the future like at least 5 months in advance, how far in advance can he really see the future into? So I'm very curious about his story, and I would kind of be disappointed if he is the one that turned Venin, because I want to see what he does if he doesn't turn. This theory comes from Reddit, this thread right here in particular, and I think this is very plausible. The crux of this theory is that dragons are supposed to use sky magic, and the dragons that we know, or like the dragons that are part of the Empyrean, are using earth magic, except Irids, who use magic from the sky. And I think there's a lot of evidence to support this theory especially when we get to the Isle Kingdoms, the evidence is kind of overwhelming. So when the quest squad reaches the Isle Kingdoms, we realize the dragons are struggling with being cut off from their magic and that none of the riders can communicate with their dragons or use their powers except for Violet, obviously. She can still talk to Taryn and Andarna, and not only that, she's actually able to wield lightning on Umbriel, which is the island of Dune. And it's interesting to me that her signet manifested on that island in particular, but I will get to that in a second. So Andarna's the only dragon that shows no sign of trouble in any of the Isle Kingdoms the way that the other dragons do. Is it because she's an Irid and she is pulling magic from the sky without even knowing it? Stay with me here. The islands are all described as being like devoid of color and like very monotone, which kind of feels like what happens when the Venin drain the magic from the earth, right? They drain the color from it. So could all of the islands potentially have been drained by Venin at one point? And maybe that's why there's no magic in the ground and like no color anywhere. Another thing that was suspicious to me about when the quest squad goes on their quest is Violet constantly feeling like nauseous and sort of off balance and dizzy. And you can argue that that's just because she has a chronic illness and that happens sometimes. Some people think she's pregnant and I think that would completely ruin the entire story. Like, there are 2 more books. We can't just have our main character like not being able to join the fight because she's pregnant. That would be crazy. I think it's because she's feeling a different type of magic than what she's normally used to. And it's kind of throwing her off balance, literally. The weirdest thing to me was when the second they leave the wards, Violet says she has the strangest urge to pull power from the sky and weave runes. Violet sucks at making runes, so why would she all of a sudden have this urge to not only make runes, but pull magic from the sky to do it? And I think it's because we know she's been using Andarna's power to weave runes because she feels like it's more approachable than Taryn's power. When Andarna leaves, Imogen is like, you used to suck at runes, but now you're legitimately trash. What happened? And she was like, well, I was using Andarna's power before, and now that she's gone, I'm using Taryn's, and it's not the same. So I feel like if she's been using Andarna's power to weave runes, it would make sense that she kind of got the feeling of wanting to pluck magic from the sky and weave it into runes, if that's what she's been doing with Andarna's power, if Andarna's power does indeed come from the sky and not the ground. That to me was like a very big clue towards that being a possibility. Another clue is that the Irids think Xaden is an abomination. Is that because Venin used magic from the earth instead of the sky? Is dragon magic supposed to come from the sky? That would make sense to me since dragons are literally flying creatures. But did the original 6 dragons start to channel magic from the earth, and is that the reason the Irids separated from them? In Iron Flame, Taryn says something about humans and dragons originally bonding because they were both desperate and they're both keeping secrets from each other. So did the dragons start to channel the earth in desperation to save their hatching grounds? We know the wards are like an umbrella. So maybe by agreeing with the original 6 to weave the wards, the dragons knew they'd be cut off from sky magic because they're in like a magical bubble, and they knew the only way to keep their power was to channel earth magic. I really think this is a huge plausibility and a huge reason why Andarna's totally fine outside the wards, why the Irids live on the Isles, and why all the other dragons were so disturbed and pained by being on the Isles, because I think they were drained of magic at some point by Venin, and potentially over like the hundreds of years that the dragons have lived in Navarre within the wards, they've sort of evolved to only be able to tolerate earth magic. Okay, my next theory is Violet's power a gift from Dune? Dune is the goddess of strength and war, and Violet's signet with Taryn is pure power. Remember, it's not actually lightning. It's pure power which she wields in the form of lightning. We know she was touched by Dune, but not fully dedicated. And we also know that the practice of like dedicating children was prohibited as of hundreds of years ago. So Violet is likely the only person in recent memory to be touched by Dune and then go forth to bond a dragon. She's also able to wield lightning on Umbriel, which I think ties into another theory that I'll talk about in a minute. But it would make sense if her pure power comes from Dune, that she would feel close to the magic at the temple on that island. And she literally says when she wields that it was just a coincidence and then thinks to herself or Dune. What? Like, why would she think that? And we know that Violet's like little hunches typically turn out to be right. So I'm sort of convinced that her power comes directly from Dune, at least her power with Taryn. Following along with that theory, okay, we have a theory about why Violet is called Silver One. Obviously, her hair is silver at the ends, but I always felt like the way that Taryn called her Silver One and the way it's capitalized, like it's a proper noun, felt like it was part of a prophecy or something deeper than that. So I'm gonna play this video by Emma Holbrook on TikTok.
Okay, so on page 525, whenever Violet comes back, when Brennan spots her, he seems shook about something. It says his eyes bulge and he looks her over for injury. And then one of the officers comes over and he also seems frazzled. And it says the officer's gaze darts over me. It's fine, Brennan assures him. What's fine? I think her hair is fully silver because she fully dedicated herself to Dune.
We saw that everyone on Umbriel at Dune's temple had silver hair. So maybe the half silver was when she was touched but not fully dedicated, like that one little girl that she saw. And now she's fully dedicated herself. And because she did that, her hair has turned fully silver as a result. If this is the case, I think our signet with Taryn is going to get exponentially more powerful as a result because of my prior theory that her signet with Taryn is actually a gift from a goddess. So now, if she's fully given herself to the goddess, I could see that power just skyrocketing. Auric said that the only way to save Tyrandor was to protect Dune's temple. We remember that, right? And maybe it's because he saw Violet and Xaden getting married there and knew that that's where their marriage would happen and that would give Violet Tyrandor. I think it's because he saw Violet getting dedicated there and knows that once she is dedicated, her power is going to be unbeatable. Auric is also potentially a servant of Dune, question mark. I was not really following that whole situation, but if he is, he must know what that means for powers and signets. So that's something that I definitely think is like 100% certain to me. It's like canon in my head that starting in the next book, her hair is going to be 100% silver. Okay, I want to do one more theory in this video. I don't want it to be too long, so I'll make part 2, 3, 4, 5, however many videos you guys want me to make about this, I will. Because if there's one thing I'm never gonna do, it's shut up about theories. Because I'm still lying awake at night, waking up in the middle of the night being like, Imogen! And a ward stone. Like, I'm having like crazy dreams about theories still, so I'll keep talking about it. As long as you'll have me talk about it, I'll talk about it. So this is the last one for this video, but we'll keep it going. Don't worry. I saw this theory on Reddit posted by Ava Tate, and I'm obsessed with this theory, okay? It ties into my previous 2 theories that we talked about. Is each dragon den linked to a god? Okay, so the most evidence we have is about the black dragons, right? Black is the most militaristic and usually a form of military leader amongst dragon kind, right? Dune is the goddess of war. So that could be black dragons related to Dune. This is why I also think that Violet could use her signet from Taryn on Dune's island, because the black dragons are tied to Dune. And this could also potentially be why Taryn said that he chose Violet as his last rider, because she is a rider connected to the god that his line is descended from. We know that dragons don't pay heed to puny gods, okay? So maybe it was more of like a subconscious thing, but The 2 black dragons that we know of that have riders have signets specifically like designed to assist in waging war. So I don't know if that's just a coincidence or if the dragons have something to do with the gods and the black dragons are tied to Dune. Let's go through the other colors as well and see what the comparison is that Ava made on Reddit. So we know that blue dragons are the most ruthless and feared. So this could tie to Malik, who's the god of death. We know that death is very feared by most people and can be ruthless at times. Orange is the most unpredictable, which could tie into Zinal, the god of luck, because luck is by nature unpredictable. You don't ever know what you're gonna get, as we saw on that island. My God, yikes, okay? Greens are the most intelligent, which could tie to Xaden, the god of wisdom. And reds are quick to temper and fiercely loyal with seemingly very, very intense bonds with their riders. So this could tie into Loyal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not. They don't have a theory for a god connected to a brown dragons. Their theory is actually that there is a god that we don't know about yet. I think this is a really, really interesting theory. And I think it makes a lot of sense because of all the links that I can see between Violet's signet, Taryn being a black dragon, her dedication to Dune, the fact that her signet with Taryn is one of the only things that can kill Venin. It just all seems kind of interconnected in some way. And in fantasy series, obviously a lot of times like gods are very prevalent in some way. So I think this is going to be a very, very interesting theory to watch. Okay, I want everyone yapping in the comments. I want to see what all of you think about these theories that we talked about today. I want you to send me any theories you have. I want you to debunk anything that we talked about today. If you have evidence against what I said, drop it in. I'm definitely going to make a part 2, maybe even a part 3, 4, 5, 6. Who knows? I don't know how many things we're going to need to talk about after this video goes up. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next part, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye.